Good morning. I'm delighted to see our football coach, our ladies basketball coach here, and I am the one to start this thing off. It's my joy and pleasure to welcome you to the third reunion of the African American Studies program. It was 1968, 45 years ago, when it all began. Now, we did not know it then, but each of us became united by the community that was called at that time Black Studies. Because that moment, we together shared, built, grew, and it became what we call now the African American Studies program. It was the second such program west of the Mississippi. Our world of 1968 was totally different. We were facing Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Black Panther, the slogan Black Power, the tragedies of Kent and Jackson State, campus unrest around the country, the weight of racism, segregation, causing riots in our cities as the feminist movement took birth, all under Nixon and Watergate. With the murders of Martin Luther King and, of course, Bobby Kennedy, our nation was frail, bewildered and frightened, not really knowing where to turn or how. On our campus in 1968, we had students who marched into President Panzer's office and demanded a black faculty member. Comprising that group of students were Esther Hadley, Dee Daniels, Maceo, and Herb White. I was on campus at the time, having just returned from Chico State, where I had interviewed for the first of 3 jobs which had been offered. I met with the students and faculty members and some community people and gave some thoughts concerning the direction that ought to be taken. I was staying with John and Judy Nelson. John and Diane Sands and others from Missoula had visited our program, the Christian Action Ministry, an ecumenical program in Chicago's West Side. John's brother David and Mary were key members of the Christian Action Ministry. I had called John after the assassinations with the hope of vacationing for a few days with him in Missoula. His acceptance set into motion what soon would take place. The students had asked about my availability, and I shared with them that I had not considered the University of Montana. I still had 2 other schools to look into. The following day, I was visited by the vice president with President Panzer's instruction to discuss my availability. I had not decided what I might do should a job be offered. I still had invitations at Berkeley and Denver University to consider. The moment I met President Panzer, it was obvious he was under great pressure. He did not know quite what to do with me. Presidents don't usually hire faculty. Usually it is departments and programs. After offering me a drink, which I thought would be coffee or tea or water, it was scotch. And I knew the job would be forthcoming. He suggested that I could be coach on a football team or instructor in humanities. I accepted the position of instructor in humanities, and I posted on the door that very day, Director of Black Studies. So it was in May of 1968, the Black Studies program was officially begun at the University of Montana. What now, looking back 45 years, seems an impossible task. I believed then that it was a mission that I believed was possible. It had 3 parts: to recruit students with scholarships, to develop an academic program and teach African American history, and to create community support. From the moment I was hired, I realized that my biggest task was to find a person from the Missoula community who would find those who would sponsor forthcoming students, invite them into their homes as members of their family. It was a stroke of genius that each person I asked told me that Judy McBride should be that person. When I approached Judy, it was an immediate yes, and she surely did truly an absolutely miraculous job. Next was recruiting the students. I had contacts across the country, and I began to call and put pressure on people, and our 6 students went from 6 in 68 to 69, 54. We had a high of 147 some years later. It did not take long before I was attacked by a radio announcer saying Missoula and the University of Montana did not need a Black Panther or a right maker in their midst. I knew I could not answer his lies, so I offered night classes to the public, offering the same lectures as I taught to my classes. Attendance was well over 100, and our critic was later arrested on sexual charges in Salt Lake City. The night class resulted in my meeting Larry and Deanna Riley, who also, as host parents, became the foundation and soul of our program and are more responsible for this scholarship event than anyone. My classes were full, remained so for 25 years. Recruiting kept me busy writing and doing research with a full-time job, which also included counseling and advising. In the early years, some faculty opposed students taking my classes. Through the years, as the classes began to be more and more popular, they called to ask if they might get their students in. Harvard and Notre Dame sought my services the first year, which I turned down. I felt committed to complete what here we had begun. Over the years, many other colleges and universities would ask about my availability. Their answer was always the same, no. When I met with President Panzer the spring of that first year, he said I had gone beyond his expectations and awarded me with the position of associate professor, a jump over assistant professor. It was not long after that he called me into his office, quite concerned about the teepees and the Indians on the Oval. I simply said, go speak with them, introduce yourself, and ask them what they want. And in a chance that they might want, you might create a program of Native American Studies. Henrietta Whiteman was soon the director, and a second ethnic program was established at the University of Montana. I was soon named Teacher of the Year and would receive another such teaching award as the years would go by. Things had gone exceptionally well that first year, and then Judy McBride shared with me that her husband had been accepted into the graduate program at the University of Wisconsin. I was more than disappointed, but I knew my next task was to hire her replacement. After making a number of calls, I settled on Richard Smith, whom I had known from Chicago. I called him and he said yes. He and Bernstein came and continued Judy's great work. Finally, a word about the scholarship. The scholarship is in my name, but in fact it should be co-listed with the names of Judy McBride, Richard Smith, Ken Grant, Farron Doss, Larry and Deanna Riley, John and Junie Nelson, Bob Panzer, and countless others, many of you in this room. Truly, I was the creator of the program, but the body and total life belongs to all of us. And I say unto you most sincerely, congratulations.
Good morning. I have the distinct honor of not filling the shoes, but sitting in the same directorship as Dr. Doss once held. My name's Tobin Shearer. I'm the current director of African American Studies program. I'd like to begin by congratulating Dr. Doss on the occasion of marking his contribution to the university and the scholarship that will be awarded this evening. It'll be a delight to see students awarded this scholarship for many years to come. Congratulations, Dr. Doss. And I'd also like to extend my deep appreciation, of which I think will be many deep appreciations, for Diana Riley for undertaking her labor of love in organizing this reunion. Diana, please stand. We'll give you a round of applause. As many of you know, Diana is, in short, a force of nature. And we are so grateful for your contributions. I've been asked to reflect on the future of the African American Studies program, having just heard the past of the African American Studies program, the history of it. And I'm more than happy to do so. And I'll begin with this statement, one that I'll return to throughout my short comments. It is simply this, that the future of the African American Studies program at the University of Montana holds much promise in a place where it decidedly should not. Consider the circumstances. The University of Montana is located in a town with a population that is 92% white and counts only 0.5% African Americans in its membership. The state as a whole has only 0.41% black membership, and on campus, proportionally, the figures aren't that much different. In a student body of some 14,000 to 15,000 students, we count in the neighborhood of about 100 African American students annually. Due to the statistical reality, the perspectives, history, and concerns of the African American community on the campus, in the city, and the state are often simply ignored. In short, prospective students don't seek out the University of Montana to study the African American experience. They come here for other reasons and join the program after they've arrived. Moreover, there is a white man, namely me, directing it. Now let me say a word or two about this racial dynamic. The first day of every class that I teach, I bring up the issue of my racial identity. I tell them about my past work as an anti-racism organizer, where I spent 15 years doing that work nationally. I tell about my partners and my long-term history of living and working and worshiping within the African American community. I mention the support I receive from my African American colleagues in applying for and ultimately taking this position. But I also make certain that my students know that I know I'm white. I tell them that we should have a conversation about having a white man as a director of the African American Studies program at the University of Montana. It's an important and essential conversation to have. I'm not offended when anyone brings it up. I tell them that I am thrilled to be able to demonstrate in my person that African American studies and the history of African American experience are something that everyone should know, regardless of your racial identity. And I tell them that there will always be a tension present in me holding this position, but I'm willing to live with that tension, and I invite my students to enter into that tension with me so that we can have free and frank and fair conversations about the meaning of racial identity in our history and in our lives today. So here again, it would appear that my own racial identity could be, at minimum, a distraction from a thriving African American Studies program. In other words, it would seem that the University of Montana is the least likely of places for an African American Studies program to thrive. And yet it does. Our Introduction to African American Studies course attracts not only first-year students new to the university, but an increasing number of sophomores, juniors, and seniors who have heard about the course and decided to take it. And I'm going to embarrass them by having a number of my students from Afro-African American Studies stand. Please stand and be acknowledged. We're delighted to have you here, even though they're getting extra credit for being in the room. You made the effort and you got here this morning. Our online Discovering Africa course has maxed out every time we've offered it since its inception in the fall of 2011. The first and second halves of the African American History course survey likewise consistently fills up semester after semester, as do our upper division courses like Voodoo, Muslim, Church, Black Religion, African American Identity, and the Black Radical Tradition, all courses that we offer regularly. In the past 3 years, a unique collaboration with the Project on American Democracy and Citizenship, the African American Studies program has garnered not one, not two, but 3 National Endowment Humanities grants to bring traveling exhibits and proposals and documentaries to the University of Montana. The exhibits include Lincoln, the Constitution and the Civil War at 150, and Created Equal, America's Civil Rights Struggle, a distinction unique at this university. Moreover, students in our classes have won distinguished awards, including the College of Arts and Sciences Richard Drake Writing Excellence Award, the first place prize for a paper presentation in social sciences at the University of Montana's Undergraduate Research Conference, and multiple scholarships from the Davidson Honors College for undergraduate research projects. One of our students was chosen to represent the Davidson Honors College in the National Ports Scholarship Competition. In the past 5 years alone, graduates from African American Studies here at University of Montana have been accepted into law school, into highly competitive graduate programs, and to advanced teacher education programs. Others have found employment as high school teachers, grade school teachers, youth ministers, social service workers, community organizers, and even a dental hygienist. We attract students with diverse and widespread interests. I could go on to talk about the awards and accolades bestowed upon our 14 core and affiliated faculty, the rise in students graduating with the African American Studies minor, the more than 400 new books on African American studies that we've added to the Mansfield Library in the past 5 years, as well as the energy and excitement evident in our annual soup and pie dinners that I have the distinct honor of hosting each semester. Ask me about my peanut butter pie. It's a killer. But at some point, we have to ask the question, why the program is thriving in a place that it shouldn't. The first and foremost answer is that we have great students. You've just seen a number of them. I would like you to meet one of them this morning in a bit more extended fashion. His name is Cameron Grant. He's not able to be with us in person, but he graciously agreed to have his remarks presented by video. So let's listen as Cam talks about what the African American Studies program has meant to him.
Go ahead. Hi, my name is Cameron Grant. I'm a sophomore here at the University of Montana. This is my second year being part of the African American Studies minor program, and I believe that it has helped strengthen the way that I learn, the way that I structure my time, and definitely the way that I write as a college student. When I first started taking African American Studies history classes, I had no clue that there was an African American Studies minor, and I had no clue about what this minor could offer me as a student here at the University of Montana. I think that this program has influenced me in 3 major categories. It has helped me become a more experienced writer, and it has also given me more confidence here at the university to try harder classes and upper division classes. Let's start with the writing. These courses here at the University of Montana for the African American Studies minor are rigorously based in reading and writing, just like many other history courses here at the university. Except for these courses, you will have much more help with your reading and writing, and you will go more in depth on what you're reading, how to structure a paper, which ways to go through it, and learning that writing isn't a linear process. Also, you will help plan your work week and your study week. I know that when I first started taking these classes last year as a freshman, I was unaware how to really plan my time. But once I realized the academic rigor that it took to complete these courses, but also realize that all the knowledge was at your fingertips. This really helped me out. This helped me go from ripping and running to sitting down, planning out my schedule, knowing when I have to read this, when I have to write this, and eventually that helped me to become a better student. And finally, not thinking that, oh, more confidence, that means these classes are easy. False. These classes are very rigorous, they're time-consuming, and they'll honestly make you frustrated. But after putting the work in that's necessary to pass these classes and to succeed at this school, I can honestly say that I'm a more confident student taking this program, and it will help me for my classes later on down the road. Now, finally, I hope that this program blossoms in the future, and I hope that the students here at the university and many other universities that are going to adopt this program realize how this minor will affect not only your future on job applications, scholarship applications, grad school applications, but it will also help you become a better writer. It will improve your confidence in school, and it will also make you a more successful adult. Thank you. I remember talking to my mom about what she thought I thought about the African American Studies program here at the university, and she asked me, do I like the classes? Because I am not African American myself, and I am learning about my history and my family's history, and I told her that was part of the reason, but I also told her that the main reason that I enjoy taking this class and being part of this program is the fact that I know that I have gained much more than knowledge of my past. I have gained the ability to structure my time, I have gained the ability to become a better college writer, and I have gained the ability to become way more confident in myself, knowing that I can be presented with a challenge, and I can also conquer that challenge with a passing grade that is a good passing grade that every student would want.
Now you can
University of Montana. This is my second year.
I'll tell Cam you clap for him. He'll be very happy. Like I said, we have great students. Students like Cam bring energy, hard work, and a level of commitment to their studies that bring me great hope. They make our program a place to which other students are attracted once they talk to students like Cam. In addition to our great students, we have also found ways to make the minor relevant to contemporary society. Our set of 10 reasons to take the African American Studies minor includes the following list that I'll read to you in a moment. Now, be forewarned, this list is sort of bragging about the program while trying to be more or less humble at the same time. We'll see if it works. 10 reasons to take the African American Studies minor. Number 1, you'll learn about the history of a fascinating community. Number 2, you will learn to talk with authority about race. Number 3, you'll get to study voodoo. Number 4, you will prepare yourself for careers in law, sports, history, journalism, sociology, education, entertainment, and many others. Number 5, you'll take fascinating classes like Native Americans and African Americans that my colleague George Price teaches, the Black Radical Tradition and Discovering Africa. Number 6, you'll get to hang out with cool people. Number 7, you'll learn to think and write critically about the past and the world around us. You heard that coming through in Cam's comments. Number 8, your resume will stand out from the crowd. And we actually have stories of this happening with our graduates. Number 9, you'll join a long list of successful graduates of this country's third oldest African American Studies program, and here you are. Number 10, you'll get to work with engaging, intelligent, good-looking, and pretty darn nice professors. Now, as you'll note, our attempt to be humble didn't really succeed in that last reason, but the point remains. We're finding ways to make the African American Studies program here at the University of Montana make sense. Yet there's one more reason that this program is thriving in a place where it decidedly should not. We thrive mostly because of our students, somewhat because of learning how to make the program make sense in a racially homogeneous environment, but also simply because we believe that it will thrive. We believe that it will. We believe that it will in a year that we remember both the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom and the murder of 4 girls at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. We believe that it will succeed because we still feel the power of Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, and we still feel the grief for the 4 African-American girls and for all the girls and boys in the black community who continue to be denied the full promise of freedom from oppression, denied the promise of freedom from racism, denied the promise of freedom from violence today. We carry that promise and that grief as we move forward. Through our classes, we explore the past that led to the promise and the contemporary reality that continues to so often deny it. We will thrive as long as that promise remains unfulfilled. Every time I walk into a room full of students ready to explore historical debates between accommodation and resistance during slavery, my belief in our future is made evident in our present in that room. Every time a student stops by to pick up an ad slip to officially join the minor, I picture another graduate walking into Grizzly Stadium for commencement as his family and friends find her name in the program with African American Studies minor boldly listed beneath their name. Every time I respond to a top-level research paper about voodoo queen Marie Laveau, or civil rights organizer Bayard Rustin, or hip-hop artist DJ Kool Herc, I thrill at the intelligence of our youth who have learned to think critically about people and topics that matter, and I have confidence that they will do so when they leave this program and the university. And every time I sit down for coffee with a graduating senior to hear what he or she has to learn while studying here, I am amazed to listen to them speak with confidence, authority, and insight about the deep divides of race and oppression in this nation. I cannot but believe that this program will thrive. I see evidence all around me. We are awash in the relevance and excellence and energy of a program posed to do yet more than we have already done. In the coming years, we will need to find ways to make our program relevant yet again to our student body population, to bring resources for them to consider, to expand our course offerings. Race in general, and the experience of the African American community in particular, continues to be relevant in our society. We are and will equip new leaders to speak to that experience, to offer expertise and insight, and to leave the university as capable and energized citizens who are able to explain to anyone who asks them, above all else, why they learned so much about the African American experience at a place where any such program should hold no such promise, should simply not be able to thrive. And yet again, we do thrive. So that's it. We're glad you're here this morning. Thank you. Reunions are about informal conversation. That's what you're here for. You're not here to hear me speak. So we're going to open up the space for you to talk to each other, to talk to those of us who are here. But first I want to check with Diana to see if there are any announcements or other things we need to do.
Judy McBride is going to have her presentation.
Please come up. Join me in welcoming Judy McBride.
Well, I can't tell you what a thrill it is to see that things are in such wonderful hands, and this is very thrilling for me. Thinking back to 1968, it was so long ago, and yet it seems like yesterday when I started working with Ulysses. And it It was so thrilling to be trusted with the details of the lives of the students. He would go out and recruit, and he'd send me back the names, and I would start with the financial aid and the host family and a work-study job, and just being sure everything was just good. And Diana Riley and I were little girls together in Helena, Montana in the 50s. So we're real Montana with all that that implies. And I can't tell you how grateful my husband and I are for being allowed to be a part of this life-changing experience. It truly was life-changing to be surrounded by these bright, beautiful, wonderful African-American students who came from all over the United States to study here, of course, but also to change the lives and the hearts of those of us in Montana. The Rileys, the McBrides, everybody who came in contact with these students have a different trajectory in their lives. I was telling Dee and Esther the other day that our daughter Rebecca was 5, 6, 7, and we would always have the students over to our house, or we would go watch the Black Ensemble. And Rebecca honestly believed that by definition, university student meant that they were African American. She was a near adult before she figured out that white people went to college too. Rebecca grew up to pledge AKA at Madison, Wisconsin. She did. She was the pledge trainer. She had the pink and the green and the steppin', and that you all did that. We adopted the first of our 2 African American children. We have this beautiful picture of Lonzo Lewis, who was Jonathan's godfather. A lot of you remember Lonzo. He had these huge hands. He was a wonderful basketball player. Jonathan was less than 5 pounds when we adopted him, and we have this picture of Lonzo holding Jonathan in his 2 hands. Jonathan has grown up to have a very prominent position in the Obama White House, and we just think that the trajectory was created by you all, and we couldn't be more grateful. The primary reason that I'm speaking here this morning is to honor John Nelson. He was with us 4 years ago at the reunion and just loved seeing the results of the work that he had put in addition to everybody else. And then he passed away, what, a year and a half ago? 2 years ago. John and Junie Nelson really introduced our family to becoming more bicultural, more open. Junie, one cannot say no to Junie. If you think Diana Riley is a force of nature, Junie was her mother in that endeavor. So Junie came over and said, we have a bunch of African American children coming from Seattle. We need homes, friendly town. I said, well, my daughter's only 3, 4, 5, whatever. She said, well, then you'll need to take 2. So I did. And then Byron and I took the train back to Seattle and got to know the parents of the kids, and it was a marvelous experience. So we were a little bit primed when the Black Studies opportunity was presented. John Nelson was just this amazing, amazing campus pastor. He was a Lutheran campus pastor here, and he was meeting with Dee and Esther and the other students to begin to move ahead, setting the tone for when Ulysses came, and the rest is history. But John was there, and I was asking the women, what is your memory of John? And they said, he was so warm, so welcoming, and so courageous. And I think that just explains who John Nelson was. He had this wonderful link to Chicago, which helped us recruit the very first group of students. His brother David and sister Mary worked with Ulysses at the Christian Action Ministry in West Garfield Park. I guess it was more than that. But when Ulysses and I are just setting up the program, he's doing these wonderful talks for the community where overflow people. The courses to the students, it was the same way. It was just this bursting. But we were still doing the recruiting, and all of a sudden Mary Nelson drives her van from Chicago with 6 students. Francis and Thaddeus, I saw Francis come in. Francis and Thaddeus Jackson, Zachy Wright, Clay Collier, Wendell Bay, Charlene something I can't remember. Anyway, here they were, and they get out at this campus, and here's the mountains, and here's the green, and they are just like, what is this? What have I come to? But they all came in the fall. They came back in the fall, enrolled as freshmen, together with kids from LA, from Seattle. John Hobbs came over from Carroll. Ulysses gathered all these people. But I still think of this little core of Chicago kids in Mary Nelson's van, just looking at what in the world is this place. And yet they came here, and with the support of Junie and John and all of the host families that we recruited out of Ulysses night classes, we had a place ready. The students that you're going to hear more from tonight had laid the groundwork, and yet when the 30, 40, 50 students came, it was so thrilling because they brought to us just a whole different world, and we could not be more grateful. I see them as real pioneers, being willing to leave the inner city of Chicago or South Florida or Alabama and come to Montana. I just think it's the greatest favor that they could possibly have done for our state and for individual families and people that we know. And this is really how I see the background. I have one John Nelson story, and then I'm going to present Junie with scholarship money in the name of John for the Ulysses Doss Scholarship. The first year that we had the bulk of students here, John decided to take a group of people from his Luther League to Chicago, West Garfield Park, to do a little work-study program, and I was going to recruit, and the students were going to help me recruit. And we got in, I think we had 2 or 3 vehicles, and we went through eastern Montana, and we went out into a 4B's restaurant, and here's all the white hippie kids with their long hair and their bare feet, and we go in there, and the hatred is palpable. The Rotarian people are, no offense, Rotarians, are moving away from us, and the Easy Rider movie was, you know, we were still remembering that, and these kids are like, we got to get out of here, and John and I are like, we got to get these people out of here. This is too scary. So we left eastern Montana, and we drove to Chicago, and when we got into West Garfield Park, the people of the community in West Garfield Park were warm, they were welcoming, they were so excited to have the people that were linked to Ulysses and to John in Montana. They welcomed us into their homes. I stayed on the 16th floor of Cabrini Green with Patty Davis's family. She only lasted a few months and then went back to a nursing program there. And we just felt like part of their families. I went to Wendell Bay's mom's house to see her, and she said, I wish I could send all 4 of my kids out to Montana. She said, they're in elementary school, they're in middle school. You know, they give them lunch, they give them breakfast, they give them basketball, but they won't teach them to read. The first time Wendell has learned anything has been at the University of Montana. I just wish I could just give you all my kids and just take them right now. And that was just so poignant, and I thought such an example of what was going on here. So John put that whole thing together and pulled it off, and we recruited, again, a bunch of great Chicago kids that came the next year and the next year. And John Nelson just exemplifies everything that the speakers before me have talked about in terms of this, the coming together of people across racial barriers, across belief systems, across religions, to be the people that we were meant to be. And so it is with just great pleasure that I introduce his wife, Junie, and present this scholarship money to whoever I give it to.
I'm delighted to be here, and John is here in spirit. Yes. When he would think about the things he had been involved in all his life, and there were a lot of things, the thing he remembered with the most fondness was the beginning of the Black Studies program here. he was raised in a family that was very aware. He had a black foster sister. His dad had integrated one of the first Lutheran churches in the country. His brother and sister were in Chicago, and they marched in Selma. And we were way out here, and he felt very isolated. But he knew that the same needs for people to grow and to change were here as well as every other place. And we had 6 children. He couldn't leave and go to Selma. But he knew that the need was just as great here for black people, for black education. And he was delighted to be a part of it. And having Ulysses Das come to us at that time made that possible. There were some things that I was involved in, not very much, but there was the housing committee, because some of the black students were having trouble renting housing here. They couldn't get it. So we had this little committee, and one night I was fixing dinner for the 6 kids and John, and I got a call from a black student who said, "I just went to look at an apartment," and they looked at me and said, "It's gone." So I said, "Okay," and I called the Lutheran Center, and there was one white student there that could go out and then apply for the same apartment to see if it was available. So Dan Dickman I called him and he said, "Okay, give me the address," and he went over and he got into the apartment. It was a basement apartment, and Dan Dickman was 6'7". And he went around in the apartment like this. "Oh, this is nice. I think I'd like this apartment. Yes, I'm going to take this." And the guy kept saying, "You can't even stand up in this apartment. You don't want this apartment." It was available. And finally, Dan convinced him to take his money. And when he had the receipt, he brought it back, and our committee filed a charge against this landlord. It never had to go to court because there was an agreement made. That landlord had to pay for the ad in the paper for the next 2 or 3 years that said it was illegal to discriminate in a rental upon race. But I think of the students, and maybe I think of the first students who came because that's when we were here. And I felt like they were the freedom riders and the Woolworth sitters of Montana. When I think of coming out from a city and they didn't, I can't even imagine they knew where Missoula was. And they obviously were not totally aware of the racial makeup of this place. One of the stories from the banquet 4 years ago was a fellow who came and was met by his host family, and the host family had said, "We'll meet you at the airport." And he said, "Well, how will you know me?" And they thought, "Oh my goodness, he doesn't know." And they said, "Wear something green." But you were brave and you were strong. And you helped us to see the way. You got a good education here, and we could see that when there was a banquet for 4 hours, and there was no schedule for a speaker. And I thought, what do we do for 4 hours? And the open mic was there, and all of these students who were now, in their 50s, 60s, I don't know, came and told the stories of coming to this place to get an education, and talked about how their lives had become vital and important and a great offering to the whole country. And I was so proud, and I still get weepy when I think about the stories we heard that night. But I want you to know that while you got an education, the state of Montana got an education. We were living in isolation out here. It was like we didn't even live in the rest of the world where all of these things were going on. But you made it possible for us to join your world and the rest of this world that was struggling and to become a part of it. Montana people were wonderful people, but they were isolated, and they were not aware, and they didn't relate personally to what was happening. But there was no way after you came that couldn't be changed. And I want to thank you for being the gift to us in Montana, and giving of yourselves, and being brave and strong, and being a gift to us. Thank you very much.